All right. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. It is Shabbat Hagadol, the great Shabbat before Pesach. So, but this week is also Parshat Metzora, and so we have this. We just read it, right? And so we have this the scene of the Metzora, the person who has Tzara'at, coming back to be integrated back into the community, right? And there's a special ritual that has to be done before they can get integrated back in, and it's very interesting, I think. So first they have to shave their whole body. They have to shave all the hair off of them, their hair on their head, their eyebrows, their beard if they have one, everything, right? Completely clean, and then go into the mikvah. For me, like this immediately, like you think of like, I don't know, for me, I do think of like a newborn baby. You have to be like reborn, right? You have to be born again, just like Yeshua said. You know, you have to be born again to see the kingdom of heaven. You have to be born again. So this almost like Yeshua's like relating back to this idea of the Metzora. It seems like to me, and to cleanse ourselves, from sin, to be born again, just like this Metzora is. And they do it like physically, which is very interesting. They become like a newborn baby. And then there's these other few things, in a sense, kind of is also seems like it's somewhat kind of about birth. So not only are they, gone into the mikvah, but they're also put blood on their right ear, right in their thumb and their toe. I mean, this blood is also like kind of a symbol, right, of like being born, and also I guess escaping death. There's all these things that it can symbolize. And then there's also oil involved. And we had a kind of a nice conversation about the oil, because it was like I think I think that, what we read, it said it was about 12 ounces of oil, which is quite a bit of oil, right? Like a whole soda can full of oil. And so they're like, I'm thinking like they're smeared with this oil all over. I don't know. I was thinking like some shiny person, right? Shiny person afterwards. But in any case, but I do know the oil is put on the ear and the thumb and the foot as well, and the toe as well. So, but this idea of Metzora being reintegrated back into the community is not just about, I feel like, being integrated back, but also giving us an opportunity to look at ourselves, and we don't have this nowadays. We don't have Tzara'at, but we can look at this as an example of what could we have been that? Could we have been that Metzora? That kind of forces us to look inside ourselves, to see what it could be wrong, what can fix, how we treat other people. Usually Tzara'at was inflicted because of what they call the Lashon Hara, or evil talk, evil speech. And so, what can we change about our speech? What can we change about ourselves? So seeing this, even though it's not present in our lives now, we can still look at the example. Now, I can only imagine like what would be like if it was really present in our lives, and how much more that would affect us. Like we would see somebody and we're like, okay, I'm not going to say anything bad anymore, right? You're going to be like more. I would feel like you're going to be more diligent, because you're going to see the effects if you don't, right? So in some ways, it's good that we don't have it, but in other ways, it's not good, because if we did have it, we'd probably be a lot more diligent about the way we were talking and about the way we're acting and things like that. But it also, allows us to think about how people did treat the Metzora, right? We have a lot of examples in the New Testament. The article that I was reading, was just from a regular, I don't know, maybe conservative Jewish view. But since we have like the stories of Yeshua, it kind of brings in a whole different idea, right? But it's funny because he was even also talking about how were they not a disease, looking at them as a diseased person, but more just like not comfortable with it, But we see that, right, in Yeshua's life and Yeshua's stories we have of how he treated the Metzora compared to everyone else. Everyone else seemed to like they were like outcasts, and didn't want anything to do with them. And then yet Yeshua goes and he's healing these Metzora people with Tzara'at, and they, and then the stories, obviously, it's almost like the priests were almost, it seemed like to me anyways, that they never like even seen Tzara'at ever being healed before. That's what it seemed like to me. I could be wrong, but it seemed like it was a very unique occurrence, and yet, we have all these rules of that. It's going to happen, so it's almost like, why were they so surprised about it? It seemed like, I don't know. But it kind of gives us an idea of how we should treat, in our modern day, how we should treat people with illness, with maybe physical deformities or something like that, how we should treat them with compassion and love, and look deeper, look deeper than just the skin, just look deeper than just the outward appearance. So there's a few different lessons we can learn. One, how we should look into ourselves and change our own hearts and our own ways of talking about things and about people. And the second is how we treat others, and not outcast them, not treat them differently because of their outward appearance. And so those are the two lessons. And so may we hold on to these two lessons and make them part of our lives. And going into Pesach, it seems like these last 2 weeks are good lessons to us, because we're trying to rid the leaven out of our homes, rid the leaven out of our lives, which is equate with sin. So these are two other ways that we can do these things, by looking at these lessons that we have in Tazria and Metzora. So maybe be diligent about these things. And that's all I have. So Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Ezra?
Shabbat Shalom. Well, I have like Ruben has, but with a twist. Yeah. And before I go into that, I will say you guys have not seen that the Torah on the house still have it. We saw it with our own eyes back in South America. It did happen, and we've repaired the walls several times. Okay, until what is the solution? Is to take out the whole wall, right? But guess what? One time a lightning went up and burned the whole thing. So beware, still in our lives. Maybe we don't see it as often, but it's still in our lives, the punishment for Lashon Hara. And Lashon Hara, even though it is something spiritual, it is contagious. That's why the person with Zara has to be put on the side. Okay, now let's see what the meanings. Okay, it not only affect the individual skin, but that which represents a divine punishment for the person who's doing the Lashon Hara. Now, one of the things that they had to do is tearing up one's clothes, which symbolizes the rupture of the connection between that person and the community, because he has to then put out on a side, okay, because of what his harmful words that he did. Now, shaving completely signifies the loss of part of that person's identity. What was one of the things that throughout the times we are different from the Greek, the Romans, and all those great nations is that they always shave themselves. So when they saw that the people of Israel, they do not shave, they think that that is gross, that is not sanitary, but they don't know that that was a commandment from God. So when you take the hair out of this person, it will seem like okay, it's like you are kind of part of that. You are not, you are clean for them, but you are not within our society. Okay. So because the Egyptians, that's what they have clothes that they just live with it. They didn't have any hair on their body, because they knew that they think that the hair was a sign of uncleanness, and also the transpiration was not as much. Even they have wigs. That's why they see the baldness as a sign of cleanness, that somebody that is clean. Now, in the isolation, this measure so this person will have time to think about it, what he did, why he got into that situation. Because when somebody does the Shon Hara, he's punished. There is a like a bond between the person who did the transgression and the person who was talking about. Okay, and what does the Torah tell us? Torah tells us that that person has to go to the person that he did the defamation or he did something wrong, and it says, to ask for forgiveness. We see it on this movie that we put for Pesa. What's the name of the movie? Ushpishin. Ushpishin. Yeah. That, remember that, what was this guy's name? He went, even though he didn't know that he did something wrong, he went over there and asked for forgiveness. He said, yeah. What's the word for that? Forgiveness is mahu. And he said, no, but you got to say it 3 times. Yeah, okay, mahu. Okay. Why? Because he has to make sure, even though he was not his fault, he had to put, yeah, exactly. Okay. So, and something that we don't think about it, but it's also a social and economical damage, because this person who did the shohara now is had to put on a side, and guess what? He cannot be with his family, his brother, his community, but he also cannot work. So it became a financial problem for that person too, and the family. But then on the other hand, that's a chance for the persons around him to do good, to go. And that's why sometimes they go or wherever he was, which was outside of the camp, and he has to, they feed him, they give him a clothes, with precaution. But then there was a time, that was a chance for the rest of the community to do like tzedakah, so do the charity for this person. It's like, and I don't know if it happens to you, but when we somebody homeless and we give him something money, and you give him something, what do they say? Thank you, right? Well, I say, don't thank me, thank God who put me. But on the other hand, I really say, thank you, Hashem. Why am I thanking Hashem? Because he's giving me a chance to do something for one of his sons that is in a need. So in reality, we have to thank God, Hashem, to give us the opportunity to do something for somebody else. So that's the way we have to look at it. It's a chance for us to do something. Because if it wasn't for the necessity of this person, we didn't have that chance to do something for one of Hashem's sons. Okay, so let me see.
Okay, Mordecai, Marcos' turn.
Shabbat Shalom. So, in the Torah portion of Metzora, one of the key concepts revolves around purity and impurity, particularly concerning skin disease and mildew. This is something that Mr. Rubin covered already, but I'm going to take a slightly different route and focus on spiritual cleanliness. Because although it places a significance on a little bit on spiritual cleanliness and the importance of maintaining a healthy community, I particularly had a stressful week due to finals, and I feel like the spiritual cleanliness and the practical aspects of that resonated with me a lot, especially in that Torah portion that talks about physical uncleanliness, and that can be, and then the spiritual side can be slightly overlooked, even though they're interchained. So yeah, one lesson we can draw from the Metzora is the idea that impurity is not merely a physical state, but also a spiritual one. Just as physical impurities can spread and contaminate negative behaviors and attitudes, can likewise spread within a community, causing harm and discord. And so while I was reading throughout this week, I saw Rabbi Schneerson's commentary, specifically Thursday, about spiritual impurity, and he talks about negativity, and I'll read what he says. Similarly to the discharges and physical impurity, a person can become spiritually impure if a person immerses himself repeatedly and deeply into negative thoughts and notions that can influence him against his will. But nonetheless, the Torah offers a person suffering from seminal discharges the opportunity to regain ritual purity by offering up the appropriate sacrifice. The same applies to someone who has unfortunately overly immersed himself in negative ways of thinking. He must never despair of himself, even if he feels that negativity is gaining the upper hand. He can always overcome and reinstate his former courage. And to me, those resonated with me a lot. Not necessarily that I was being negative this week, but the stress of having all these like really key important exams can really dig at you during the week, and it can be bad for your community if everybody, especially me and all my siblings, were all taking tests, we're all living together and taking these really important exams for our careers. It was key to remain to have mental fortitude and not let cold, quick replies navigate how we treat each other during exams like this. And I found it very nice that my siblings and I could do that, and also enjoy ourselves and celebrate after we finish. And so yeah, that's my drash.
Oh yeah. I had two things that I wanted to share about this Torah portion. And the first one, again, is about Lashon Hara. Of course, we understand, the sages usually teach in Judaism that Lashon Hara is about evil speech about another person. But, it literally means evil tongue or evil speech. And even though the sages primarily teach that you shouldn't be speaking Lashon Hara about another person, evil speech also has to do with what you say about yourself, negative self-talk, pessimism, and just negativity about life in general. Because when you complain about life in general and you're just pessimistic in general, what you're saying is that you don't like the way that Hashem is ruling the world. Because in Judaism, we understand that everything comes from Hashem, both good and evil. Yotzer or uvurei choshech. He fashions light and he creates darkness. He brings good and evil, just like in the book of Job. That's what we learned from Job. Hashem brings all things, good and bad, into our lives. And so when we're always complaining about life and we're always pessimistic, what we're doing is we're complaining about Hashem's kingship and the way he rules things. And then when we complain about ourselves, when my children talk negatively about each other, sometimes I tell them this: don't talk negatively about my child, even though they are one of my children. I say, don't talk negatively about my child, because even though they're my child, they're talking negatively about my child. But if you talk negatively about yourself, you're also talking negatively about one of Hashem's children. And if you belong to, if you're a follower of Yeshua, it says in the Brit Hadashah that we are not our own, we are bought with a price. And even if you are not Messianic, it says in the Torah, let my people go, Hashem said to Pharaoh, to Paro, because so that they may serve me in the wilderness. So he's saying they will become my servants now. So when you talk negatively about yourself, you're talking negatively about one of Hashem's servants, even though it's your own self. We are not our own. Our bodies are not ourselves. We are what's inside of us. And so when we're talking negatively even about our bodies, have a negativity about our self-image, again, we are talking negatively. We're actually blaspheming, because we're talking negatively about something that has been made in the image of God, right? Because we're made in the image of God. And this reminds me of, I was also talking to one of my children the other day, and he's saying that suicide is not bad. It's just sad. And I said, no, suicide is also bad. It's not just sad. Why is it that if you kill someone else, that's bad, but if you kill yourself, you're not bad and that's just sad? No, it's also bad. Of course, in Judaism, suicide isn't always sin. Samson, Shimshon, is not considered a sinner for taking his life, but that's because he laid it down to save his people, just like Yeshua did. So martyrdom is a form of suicide. It's not necessarily negative. But when you harm yourself and you understand the ramifications of that, which means, it will affect your siblings, it will affect your parents, Suicide can ruin marriages. Suicide can cause trauma. It can be a chain reaction, and not just suicide, but even just like abandonment. Like when, for example, when mothers or fathers abandon their families, you're not suiciding yourself, but you, in a way, you are, because you are stripping your presence away from your family. Or when children, sometimes they strip themselves away from the presence of their family. Even friends, it can be a very traumatic experience to do that. So that's the first point that I want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about, which I think is very related, this is based on a drash that Avichail Virgil did in the past, and it's based on some passages from the Talmud. So our Torah portion is about the Metzora, the leper, right? And it says in Sanhedrin 98, which is the Talmud, it says that it's speaking of who is the Messiah. And there's many names for the Messiah in Jewish literature. But it says here in the Talmud, Sanhedrin 98, it says, and the rabbis say, his name, speaking of Messiah, is the leper, the Metzora, as it is said in Isaiah chapter 53, verse 4. It's quoting Isaiah chapter 53. So remember, don't ever listen to Tovia Singer or whoever, whatever kind of anti-missionary that says that Isaiah 53 has nothing to do with Messiah. The sages of the Talmud, the sages of Judaism themselves say that Isaiah 53 has to do with the Messiah. It said that in the Talmud, it says, as the rabbis say, his name, meaning Messiah's name, is the leper. As it is said, surely our sickness he himself bore, and our sorrows he carried. Yet we ourselves esteemed him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. So the anti-missionaries that say that has nothing to do with Messiah, they're being dishonest, or they don't believe the Talmud, which they're supposed to. They're supposed to be students of the Talmud, right? Because he was pierced through for our transgressions. He was crushed for our iniquities. The chastening of our well-being fell upon him, and by his scourging, we were healed. And there's some wordplay over there with scourging and the leper in Hebrew. But okay, so why would, I think a big question that a lot of people don't talk about is, why would Messiah be called a leper? And it says in another passage, let me see if I can find it. Oh, here we go. Also in the Talmud, it says that Rabbi Yehoshua ben Levi, ben Levi asks Elijah the prophet where he might find the Messiah. And Elijah answers that the Messiah sits in the gates of Rome. And well, as a Messianic believer, I believe that stands for the Roman Catholic founded Christian church. He stands in the gates of Rome. And there are many Kabbalists that believe this as well. And so he stands at the gates of Rome, and he's a leper. Why is he a leper? Well, in Judaism, Yeshua is understood to be that a Rasha, a wicked man, a wicked Jew, who spoke wickedly of the Jewish people, and also influenced many people, many Jews especially, to break covenant with Hashem and cease to follow Torah. So I believe that there's, and Ariel Cohen Alorio talks about these types of things also. He is an Orthodox Jewish Kohen priest who is a Talmud of Yeshua. And his one of his goals is to hold a retrial of Yeshua, because he had a trial once, right, as is spoken of in the Gospels, and the Sanhedrin, the corrupt Sanhedrin of that time, condemned him as guilty, and this is why he's part of Rome, even though that wasn't really truly his purpose, but all is in Hashem's will. But this is how he's known as in the Jewish world. He's the Rasha, he's the evil, wicked person that spoke negatively of the Jewish people. And he did truly say some things that were Lashon Hara, but Rambam outlines that there is a time for Lashon Hara. There is a time to speak negatively of people. We don't talk about that a lot. And the appropriate time to speak negatively of people is when you are warning others about another person's wickedness that could affect them. So if there is evil that someone is doing, and it could affect someone that you have not only the right, but the responsibility to warn people of wickedness. And that is the kind, I believe, that is the kind of Lashon Hara that Yeshua did. But because of the corruption of the Sanhedrin at his time, he was treated as a Rasha instead of treated as a prophet or a tzaddik, which I believe he was. But anyways, the Talmud goes on to say about him that, let's see if I can find it. Okay. It says here, Rabbi Yoshua ben Levi asks Elijah the prophet where he might find the Messiah. Elijah answers that the Messiah sits in the gates of Rome. Ben Levi asks, how will I recognize Messiah when I see him? And Elijah replies, he is sitting among the poor lepers. All of them, the poor lepers, let me just say that too. Who are the poor lepers? The poor lepers are those other ones that also speak negatively. This is my midrash, of course, my personal midrash, about the Jewish people. And collectively, the Christian church speaks a lot of wickedness, some founded, some unfounded, about the Jewish people. So they are counted sort of, just like the Messiah is, as lepers. They are outside the gate. All of them, says, undress their bandages all at once and retie their bandages all at once. But he, meaning Messiah, unties and reties one bandage at a time, thinking, when the time comes that I am summoned, I must not be delayed. Meaning, Messiah does something very differently. He knows that he is Messiah, and he knows that his coming, the time for his return back to the people of Israel, he knows he will be healed. He knows that he will be vindicated. And one day, the Jewish people will understand he was not a Rasha. He was only doing and speaking things for the good of Israel, but some of his later followers, or so-called followers anyways, misinterpreted his words to make him out and to perpetuate the lie that he was a Rasha, that he was speaking evil, unfounded evil of the Jewish people. But by the way, also the sages the sages say that the reason for our exile today, the reason for the exile of the Jewish people today, is because of baseless hatred. And I believe that's all related. Baseless hatred leads to Lashon Hara. Anyways, it says that when the time comes that I'm summoned, I must not be delayed. So he doesn't take out all his bandages at one time and then put them back on. He takes them off one at a time so that at any moment that he is healed, he'll be fully bandaged and ready to present himself to the priest again. And this is the goal of Ariel Cohen Oloro. He would like to represent Yeshua back to the Jewish people and hold a retrial so that he can be declared clean once again, and so that his name will no longer be considered a curse among Israel as it is today by many Jews. And I do believe that time will come, and that retrial must happen in a sense in order for all Israel to be saved, not just on an individual level, but that the heads of Israel will also welcome him back. And there are many Kabbalists that hint to this, and that maybe won't openly admit it or openly call him by name, but that do also believe that Yeshua belongs to the Jewish people, that he has been misrepresented, and there's a time that he will one day come back from Rome and back to his rightful home among the Jewish people, among Israel.
Shabbat Shalom. So Reuben was talking about the Torah portion, the blood on the ear, on the thumb, and on the feet. So the ear, it's consecrating our body. The ear, we should sanctify what we hear, not just listen to anything out there. The doings of our hands shouldn't just be strictly what I want to do. Sometimes it's not healthy, it's not spiritual, it's negative. And the toe helps with the balance of the foot. The main thing for the power and the balance of the foot, where we go, how we go, how fast we go, what quality of retreating from the negative, or the quality of how eager are we to approach the King of Kings. And the blood, the Torah says, "Bli shpichat dam ein slicha." Without the shedding of blood, there's no forgiveness of sins. It's not so much a bloodshed. Of course, the Torah, we have to do the korbanot, the sacrifices, but shedding blood, you have to have a sword or something sharp to cut. And it's cutting the life of something. When we bring the korbanot to the Beit HaMikdash and the Kohen slaughters it, it's not an animal of our choice that we bring. It's the animal of God's choice. But also, the domestic animals that are kosher for the slaughter, actually, they slept with the Benei Israel in the cold. It kept them warm. They were attached to it like a family member. So the sword cutting. So it's taking things that we are so attached to, that we think we own. Everything, the King of Kings owns it. Hashem owns everything. So the Garden of Eden, the Etz HaChaim, is guarded by the double-edged sword, and it says Romamot El Bigronam, Romamot El, the praises of God, the Heret Pitio Biadam, and the double-edged sword is in their hand. And the tongue is also mentioned like a sword. It's a lot of things about the sword. And when the sword is in the sheath, it's the time of chesed, grace. When the sword is how to be, is in the Tehillim it talks about it. When the sword is like open out, it's judgment. We are to judge ourselves before we judge anyone else. But the killing of the animal, killing to that which we're so attached to, that should not come between us and God. Your wife, your bank account, your job, your reputation should not come before the fear of God. And I'm not talking about fear like, oh, I'm scared, but the awe of him. It's the reality, the essence of his ambrosial love. And so when we die to ourselves, think about listening, staying with the positive information. That's why we need each other. That's why we need Torah study. We need to come together and we need to communicate with God. The Christians say prayer, Bible study, and fellowship, but I'm putting it in a Jewish term. But it's all about the discipline. We're dying to ourselves, not to please God. He's always pleasing, but so that we can empty all the garbage out and have all the treasures that he has planned for us. So that's something to think about. So, Shabbat Shalom.
Can you hear me? Okay. It's always a pleasure to be here. We just really enjoy your time here. First, I was noticing, throughout the week, we use a lot of different educational sites, Chabad, Aish, and just to remind everybody, it's those things are not free. Those websites are not free. So even $1 or something you feel, you might want to think about putting them on your Zadaka list or a Maser, just to, that way that these things are available to us. We live in a time where the Torah is wide open. Our sages say that one of the ideas is that during the time of the Mashiach, right before the Mashiach, there won't be found any Torah teaching. So we need to be very thankful that the Torah is wide open. Even the hidden things are starting to become available. You have to search for it on, Sephora.com and different places. But if you want to read just an amazing amount of Jewish literature, it's available. It's the first time in history that we have that. So Baruch Hashem. So I just want to go over the mitzvot. There's 10 this week for in Metzora. This is categorized by the Rambam. So carry out the prescribed rules, purifying the Metzora. The Metzora must shave off all their hair prior to purification. A Metzora must bring an offering after going to the mikveh. Observe the laws of impurity caused by men's running issue. A man who has a running issue must bring an offering after he goes to the mikveh. Observe the laws of impurity of seminal emission. Every impure person must immerse himself in a mikveh to become pure. Observe the laws of menstrual impurity. Observe the laws of impurity caused by woman's running issues. A woman who had a running issue must bring an offering after she goes to the mikveh. So there's one thing that's inferenced almost every single one of these mitzvot is that the importance of the mikvah. You know, in Christian circles, it has been. I think it's like a new idea, but we mikvahed for all sorts of different reasons as Jews, and it became in places like France, it became a deal. Well, if you wash yourself too much, you might become a Jew, right? So it's like, even today, it's like a cultural thing. You got to be careful. It's almost religious. You see this kind of put out in one of the founding fathers. He wrote a lot of good stuff. Benjamin Franklin, right? He says it. Cleanliness is not getting next to godliness. Where did he get that from? He got that from Jews, right? So one thing that's very interesting about the purification of the Metzora, of the person that has the wrath, is they have to shave off all their hair. They have to shave their head, shave their eyebrows, and shave all their entire body. And so they come out of the mikvah, like Ezra and other people have said, they come out like a brand new baby, you know, brand new, like a born again, right? Is the idea. So other cultures have a different view of modesty, right? They show where you can see the underarms, and I'm speaking about women, and a lot of times athletes too. The underarms will be completely shaved, and their legs will be completely shaved. It's a relatively new phenomenon. Again, I don't mean to be, if anybody's French or anything, it's not dogging on the French, but these are customs that derive from the French. You know, it's like, oh, you're getting a little, you know. And last night we were talking about hair, you know, and the importance of hair. And people can go overboard with it. There, a couple of years ago, there was a website. It's been shut down now. It was a kind of a parody on the Orthodox Church's view on hair. It was called the Church of the Holy Beard, and it was all about beards, and you know, and but you know, it's very important. Hashem says that He counts the hair of the beard and the hair of the head. He says it's so important to Him that he counts it, and he I don't know why He would do that, but apparently it's very, very important to Him. So in our tradition, you know, men and women cover their head. You know, in certain, you know, and so in some traditions we have the peyotes. We have people wear longer beards. The issue is just to have a beard and not to use a razor on. But you know, there's you know, I try to take the practical and the Kabbalistic and meld them together. And so Rabbi Nachman says, Rabbi Nachman, or one of his students, said that, you know, if you can't do the mitzvah, then if you're a man, just grow your hair. Because if by, you know, just doing that mitzvah, you know, Abraham himself will pull you out of Gehenna by your hair, by your peyote, you know. So I'm like, maybe that's a good idea to grow peyote. But my deal is I look like Grandpa Munster. It like grows this way, and it doesn't seem to go down. So trying to tame it, you know, and still, you know, go into business meetings without looking like Grandpa Munster. But you know, these are things to to think about. You know, why does Hashem? You know, we think we're, you know, well, hair, I can cut it however I want, and I can present myself however I want. But it's important to Hashem. All these things, these mitzvot that we heard about today in the Torah portion are not applicable today, but they will be, and we should know what to do when we get back in a temple situation. So I think the bottom line about the hair issue is Hashem cares about. There's in the Hasidic writings, there's an idea that Hashem views this as He would a child. He sees this, and He sees our hair dangling or a beard blowing in the wind, or He just sees this, you know, I just love this. Well, you see a child growing up, and you just see their mannerisms. Hashem cares about every aspect of our lives. So don't think that anything that you do is not important. Everything you do has repercussions in eternity. Hashem loves you, and He cares about you, even to the minute details of our hair. Baruch Hashem.